Hey everybody. Hey, I've been wanting to do a video here the last few days. Welcome to the Hangar Deck, by the way. I wanted to do a video on chipping, the way I do chipping. It's fairly simple. Some of you are going to like it, some of you aren't. That's cool. Um, but I just wanted to show you how I did it. I kind of picked it up from a book I bought years ago by Shepherd Payne. And as many of you know, he was one of the masters in model building and diorama building, and I am in no way anywhere close to his quality. But this is something I've been wanting to pass along. I wanted to talk while we're doing the chipping a little bit about aircraft and how they get chipped and how the finish erodes on it. I guess you could say this is along the same lines as weathering, and there's probably as many different weathering videos and tutorials as there are weather types out there. So, pick and choose. I think your best idea is to choose what works best for you from this big tree out there that bears the fruit of model building. So go pick the fruit that you like and make yourself a fruit salad. Okay, so I'm going to put this video down a little bit so that we can reposition it. Hopefully you can see what's going on here. And okay, maybe not. Hopefully you can. So this is a Nakajima J1N1 SA Night Fighter. It's the Allied code name is an Irving, and it was a two-seater. It had 20 millimeter cannons back here in the back that fired obliquely up, and so it would sneak in underneath B-29s at night and fire at them and shoot them down. So kind of neat that way. I guess not neat if you were in the B-29, but you know what I mean. Kind of an interesting concept. Okay. So as you can see, I've already started a little bit of chipping right here. And so we're going to continue on with that. But first we're going to talk a little bit about why aircraft chip. So one reason why aircraft chip is obviously because of weather. I heard a long time ago the old saying, water always wins. No matter what happens, water will win. The Grand Canyon was created by water, basically. So these aircraft are exposed to water either on the ground or flying through a cloud or whatever, what have you, and that water is going to erode away at the finish. So you can see a little bit of chipping right here that I've started with some silver. And so why would it chip right there? Well, there's a couple of reasons why. One could be because ground personnel are walking in this area to service this engine. They have rocks in their shoes, and those rocks come up and they make little scratches in the paint. Those scratches get exposed to air as the air passes over the wing as the aircraft is flying, and it slowly chips away at that paint. The first thing that would be revealed would be whatever underprimer there was, and then finally bare metal. Sometimes that happens all at once. Also, the skin is aluminum. Aluminum will corrode. The corrode will cause a little bump, and then eventually the paint will break loose from that bump and expose some bare metal. So one thing to think about whenever you're chipping an aircraft is what type of aircraft you're working on. Now you might think, well, yeah, of course you would think about that. But if you're an old hand at chipping aircraft and you're really good at making what look like exposed metal areas on your aircraft, and then all of a sudden you come along and you build a Mosquito. Anybody know where I'm going with this? Mosquitoes were wood, and they had a lot of dope, a lot of fabric on their aircraft skins. So obviously that's not going to leave a lot of bare metal. So just something to think about. Okay, I'm going to go down here to this aileron here. And the lead edge of this aileron is going to get some chipping. So I've put just a little bit of silver paint on this brush. And then I came over, I have a paper towel here. I'm going to grab a little piece of paper towel. And I'm going to hit that silver off on that paper towel so that we get the bulk of that silver paint off. And then we're going to come in here and very lightly touch that. And what we're doing is we're creating the illusion, after all, that all of this is illusion, we're creating the illusion of bare metal on this aileron. Hopefully you can see that. Bring that up a little bit better. And we're putting just a little bit of bare metal right there. Okay. All right, now we're going to move on. We're going to go to another spot. And we're going to go over here to our meatball, as the Allies called it. And we're going to work on this seam right here. We're going to put just a couple of little chips right there, where the weather is causing that red and the green underneath to chip off. Now we're going to go up here to this engine nacelle. And these engines are removed and replaced and serviced. An engine, we tend to service our car engines every 3,000 miles. We put in new oil and all that good stuff. A lot of these aircraft were serviced every time they came back from a flight. So panels were removed and put back on. If you look at your model really close, you'll see small little squares and oblong circles, and those are all little access panels, and every one of those access panels is a good spot for at least one or two little chips, because those were taken off and put back on, and that caused a lot of chipping. Now, another thing that caused chipping was our aircrew getting in and out. So that's going to happen right in this area right here, right along this wing route, because these guys walked up back and forth, and I've got this dry silver paint. I'm just kind of working this brush back and forth like this. Hopefully you can see this. Right in, if I can do this without turning over my silver paint, right in this area right here. So my brush is getting a little bit too dry, so I'm going to pick up a little bit more silver paint. And we're just kind of touching this back and forth. Every time we touch this, we leave the illusion that this finish is being worn off. So another good spot for wear on a single engine fighter is on up past the cockpit. So why would it be worn on the wing past the cockpit? Well, one reason could be because the ground crew, once again, are getting up on that wing route and walking past the cockpit to service the engine. And they're standing on that wing route, and they're scuffing it up with their shoes. Now today, if you were working on, say, a beach bonanza, you might be putting down a mat to protect that aircraft, to keep that finish from being worn down. And you would probably be smart to do that, especially if it wasn't your aircraft. Just like when you take your car to the garage, one of the things that the mechanic does is he puts a blanket, some sort of blanket over the fender so that he's not scuffing up that fender. Well, that's really great, and that's a good practice. But we're talking 1940s here, and there's a war on, in case you didn't hear. And there's people being shot down, and who knows if this plane's even going to be available for the next mission, so on and so forth. So there wasn't a lot of time to take care of superficial problems, and that's why we spend time chipping and working on our aircraft to make them look like they're being used. So here's some more chipping right here. I'm going to go back around this access panel for this engine. Just a little chipping here and there. Now I've also used some AK weather pencils to add some weather to this aircraft. One thing you want to think about when you're doing your weathering is, are you going to chip in that same area? Because you might want to chip first and then add the soot or dirt later, because it's going to cover some of that up and it's going to subdue that chipping a little bit. There's another little general rule of thumb about chipping, and you're going to think I'm just trying to be cute here, but the same thing goes for weathering. A blemish on your model, in other words, if you make a mistake, and I know you guys never make mistakes. I don't even know why I bring this up, because I know you guys, you model builders, never make mistakes. Unlike me, you never make mistakes. But should you make a mistake, that's a great spot for a chip. So just something to think about. So now we're going to go bring this over here. And one of these days, if I get enough time and money and inclination, I'm going to get a decent video camera so I can do this right. So we're going to go over here to our little red ball, or rising sun. I know there's a Japanese name for this, but I can't remember what it is. And once again, we're going to apply a few chips. We're going to stay along towards the edge, lead edge, trail edge, and the edge of any seams, because those seem to seam. See what I did there? Those seem to be problem areas for chipping. Chipping is kind of like weathering in that less is more sometimes. Of course, if you're working on an F4F Wildcat that flew off Guadalcanal, you know, that was basically a runway that was made out of coral. That stuff is as abrasive as sandpaper. And so those guys were always kicking that stuff up. If you were the last guy to take off in a formation of 4 airplanes, and sometimes for Guadalcanal, that would be a lot of aircraft. But if you were the last guy to take off in that formation, you're going to get coral blasted by all that coral getting kicked up by all those other aircraft, and it's going to really do a number on your paint job. And of course, you're not going to have, Gunny's going to be mad because you're going to bring back the aircraft and it's going to be corroding and stuff, but he's not going to have time to do anything about it. Number one, you got a mission tomorrow. Number two, they're coming down the slot tonight to pound heck out of Henderson Field with 8-inch guns. So that plane, once again, that plane may not even be there tomorrow. It may get dusted tonight. A really great book. I know a lot of you guys, model builders, are really big into history, and some of you new model builders might not know some of the books that us old dogs do. But a really great book, if you can get a hold of it, is a book called Cactus Air Force, and it's all about the guys that flew off of Guadalcanal. The code name for Guadalcanal, for Henderson Field, was Cactus. So everybody that flew off of that, whether they're Marine, Navy, Air Force, what have you, they were all in the Cactus Air Force. And I met an old guy one time on the USS Intrepid, the museum, and he was an older fella, and he was a docent, and he was a Marine, former Marine. No, he was a Marine. Once a Marine, always a Marine. Right, devil dogs. But he was a Marine, and I asked him, I said, and he had aviation wings on his little docent badge, and I asked him, I said, so what did you fly in the Marines? And he said, I flew that plane over there, and he pointed over at the F-1J Fury, and that was a jet that looked a lot like the F-86. In fact, it was kind of patterned off that aircraft. I think maybe the Navy snuck it out of an Air Force hangar and had North American redo it so that it would land on a carrier deck, but what have you. But I knew the guy was older than that, and I said, yeah, I said, but what was the first aircraft that you flew off of Guadalcanal? Or flew for the Marines? And he kind of grinned a little bit, and he said, well, he said, I flew the F-4F Wildcat off of Guadalcanal. And I said, you were part of the Cactus Air Force. And his eyes got as big as $50. And he said, how do you know about the Cactus Air Force? And I said, sir, I said, I've been reading about your exploits all my life. And I said, it is indeed an honor to meet you. So that was really cool. And you know, as cool as that guy was, he was even cooler in that he really didn't want a lot of recognition. He was just there to tell people about history. And, you know, of course, I tried to, I glad handed him a couple times, shook his hand a couple times because I thought he was really cool. But, you could just kind of tell, hey, you know what? I was just doing my job along with everybody else that was there. And the guy flew with Joe Foss. And if you don't know who that is, look him up. He was a pretty cool cat, too. All right, guys, this is kind of all I have for today. I just wanted to kind of give you a really quick rundown on how I chip. There's a lot of different ways to do it. There's a lot of cool techniques out there. This is just kind of down and dirty for me. It's really easy for me, and I think it turns out pretty decent. So I'm going to give you the once over real quick. Hopefully you can see this and I don't drop the camera right on my plane. But there's a couple of areas that I've chipped and kind of gives you an idea of what we're going for there. And, we talked about boo-boos. I kind of messed up that. These are painted on, the meatballs are painted on, and I kind of messed up the lead edge of that one. So I just kind of shaved it off with a little bit of paint and made it look like it's chipping. And look like it's had a bad weather day. Bad hair day, bad weather day. So, okay, that's it. I'm Tom. This is the Hangar Deck. And that's it for this time. You guys take care. Happy building. Remember, learn, build, enjoy, repeat. Build, learn, enjoy, repeat. That's the right order. Build, learn, enjoy, repeat. All right, take care.